And the movie begins in the small town of Maine, where a talented artist, David, lives in the suburban part of the town with his wife and son. One night, as he finishes a piece, he notices that a thunderstorm outside was getting harsh, so he takes his family down to the basement. And a few minutes later, the tree in front of the yard falls on the house and lands precisely where David has been working. Deciding to go into town and get some supplies, David takes his son and his neighbor Brent and drives out. On their way, they notice dozens of military cars passing by them, and they get suspicious as to what exactly is going on. Once they get to the market, David tries to use the phone booth, but realizes, just like their phones, the phone booths aren't working either. There was a power outage, and with everything being done by hand, there was a long line at the supermarket. Suddenly, an emergency alarm starts to sound throughout the town, and everyone starts looking out the window, and they see a bloodied old man hurrying toward the store. Once he was inside, he starts screaming for the people to stay away from the mist, telling them that something took his friend, and panicking, the people in the store shut the doors, avoiding the mist that had now engulfed everything outside. We then see an earthquake shaking the store, causing mass anxiety and panic. Once the earthquake stops, the people in the shop start cleaning up and try to bring a bit of normalcy to their situation. David tries to keep his son calm with the help of a few older women and a new school teacher called Amanda. When he realizes that Billy was feeling cold, David goes around to find a blanket and notices something pushing against the garage door. Hurrying back to the main area, he tells some of the men what he had seen, and they all head back to check it out. The countrymen, who think David is talking down to them, disregard his concern and open the garage door, and as they start to make fun of him, something that looks like a tentacle slithers through the crack and grabs a young clerk's leg and pulls him out. Although David tried to save the boy, the tentacles start ripping off bits and pieces until their increasing number was a threat to the others and they were forced to close the doors. David was livid at Jim for prioritizing his ego and getting the young man killed. The men head back out and discuss how they're gonna keep the monsters outside when the market was mostly glass. Realizing that they needed to inform everyone of what they had seen, David gathered the people around for an announcement. He started to describe the events that took place a few moments ago with some detail, ending in the announcement of the bad boy's death. A morbid silence settles for a few seconds before people start laughing, calling David and the others crazy. Having no other choice but to show them the proof, they take some of them out back and let them see the blood and the tentacle still wiggling around. Returning to the awaiting crowd, the manager and the others confirm David's story, and Mrs. Carmody, a mean, lonely old woman who was convinced their troubles have started because of sinners, was praying in the bathroom when Amanda walks in. Although the teacher tries to console her, Carmody, being her very rude self, rebuffs Amanda's kind words, telling her that she doesn't need a friend like her. In the food aisle, people have started to stack fertilizer and dog food over the windows to avoid them from getting broken into. Everyone tries to contribute to the safety of the place, all of them doing what they can, except for Carmody, who only seems to disrupt the flow with her consistent preaching. The people try to get her to be quiet because she was scaring the children, but the ignorant woman refuses, pushing along with her preaching of the end of days. She then continues to tell people that they must sacrifice someone if they want to survive, which really angers Amanda, who slaps her. Angry, Carmody warns them that the things outside will come for them one by one, and still unwilling to believe what David had said because of an old vendetta, Brent riled up some people and they decided to leave the market and seek rescue. Although the rest of the people beg them to reconsider, they've already made up their minds, and when he sees that Brent won't change his mind, David asks him to tie a rope around his waist, which would let them know that they'd at least gotten 300 feet. Amongst the crowd, a biker volunteered for the task, thinking that he could also retrieve the shotgun in one of the men's trucks. As the group continues forward and disappears into the mist, the people in the market wait anxiously. As the biker moved slowly forward, David and the others let go of a small amount of the rope to check how far that they've reached. And suddenly, the rope started to be dragged aggressively, burning their hands as it went. Grabbing it with any clothes that they can find, they start pulling back only to see the severed torso of the biker, making the place erupt in screams. That night, the people gather in small groups after hanging lights all over the place, trying to find a sense of comfort in their time of need. Suddenly, giant bugs start dropping on the glass out of the mist, attracted to the light. While everyone scrambles to turn them off, the bugs begin to smash against the window, fracturing it with each bang. When the glass finally fractures, the giant bugs and even the bigger bird-like creatures start to flock in, picking up whatever they can, and people start to fight off the creatures, but the unprepared are taken quickly, including the young cashier Sally. After a brutal fight with the monsters, the people in the market finally manage to kill all the creatures and chase out the rest. And once the worst was over, the people tried to help the wounded, taking care of them to the best of what the shop could offer. Gathering at the back with Amanda and some of the other men, David tells them that he was planning to go out and get his car to retrieve medicine for the injured people, then explains that he plans to leave, but he can only fit 8 people into his car. He was eager to leave the store as soon as possible, fearing that since her coincidental predictions have come true, people would start listening to Camerdy. David and some of the other men try to leave the market, but they're stopped by Camerdy, who frightens the people by telling them that they will lead the monsters right back to their doorstep. But ignoring the very paranoid and crazy woman, the group heads out. David takes the link, and the line of men slowly makes it to the pharmacy, and they start taking what they need. After picking up some of their essentials, they try to head out but notice large spider webs on the ceiling with dozens of people trapped inside. As they slowly back away, they hear a scream coming from a man trapped on the walls by the webs, begging them to help him. As they desperately struggle to free him, his body, covered in painful blisters, suddenly becomes a living nightmare. It's as if he's become a breeding ground for an army of spiders bursting forth from his skin. The men are paralyzed with shock and revulsion, and their instincts to flee kick in. But their escape is stopped by even larger spiders, spewing acidic webs from every corner. Despite losing one of their own and another suffering grave injuries, the group miraculously manages to escape the clutches of these terrifying creatures, and they return to the safety of the supermarket, forever scared by the haunting images etched into their minds. Hours later, David awakens from his unconscious state, his mind slowly clearing. As he regains his senses, he becomes aware of Carmody's relentless preaching, which seems to have gained an unsettling influence over the others since the terrifying ordeal that they just endured. Trying to avoid the growing hostility, a small group forms in secrecy. Amanda, the elderly woman Irene, Ollie, and a handful of others huddle together, and with their hushed voices, make a plan. They realize that the once peaceful supermarket was slowly becoming a hostile environment, and they quietly discuss the possibility of venturing out in search of rescue. The tension in the air was obvious as they weigh the risks, knowing that their lives depended on making the right decision. Suspicious that the 3 soldiers that had been trapped with them might know something, David talks to Private Jessup, asking him for information about what was happening outside. Although he tries to deny it, David keeps pushing until Jessup tells him that 2 of his buddies will explain. Looking for the 2 missing soldiers, the group goes out back and finds them hanging on the ceiling, having actually offed themselves. Shaking, Jessup tells them that they had said that they would off themselves, but he didn't think that they were actually being serious. While David confronts him about what the military was doing, drags Jessup out by the collar and announces what he heard to everyone. Putting him on trial in front of everyone's wrath, Carmody starts asking him questions about what he knew, and scared, Jessup explains that he wasn't responsible for what happened and that he only heard rumors. He tells them that the military was experimenting with other dimensions all around us and they wanted to make a window to look through. Carmody convinces the crowd that Jessup is to blame for what's happening to them and rallies the people against him. Angry, the crowd starts beating him up until one man stabs him in the stomach repeatedly, and Carmody then screams and say that they should feed him to the beasts, and the crowd obliged, and they carried Jessup over their heads and threw him outside the door. They then watch as a giant creature appears out of the mist and drags Jessup away, his screams quieting immediately. After the disturbing events of the night, everyone goes to sleep a bit unnerved, and when dawn finally arrives, Amanda wakes David up and tells him that it's time for them to leave. After getting everyone in the group ready, they head out to the aisle, but are unable to find the grocery bags that Ollie had stashed the day before. Up front, Carmody was sitting there with a knife in hand and tells them that she can't allow them to leave because it wasn't God's will. When David tells the unstable woman that they they haven't interfered with her work and asks to be given the same privilege, she gets upset and accuses them of being heathens. She then has her people try and grab David's son, as well as Amanda, to become their next sacrifice. David and the others try to protect them using any weapons that they can find around them until Ollie pulls out a gun and shoots Carmody in the head, immediately ending the uproar. Leaving the hysteric people behind, the group rushes toward David's car, and Ollie makes it there first, and he makes sure that each door is open for the rest of them to jump right in. Ollie sees Dave and the others approach with excitement, unaware that a giant creature was approaching from behind them. Before he has a chance to react, the monster grabs him by the neck and rips him apart, and after they see it walk away, the 5 of them get inside their car, but before David starts the car, he sees Ollie's gun on the hood. Just as he retracts his hand and closes the door, a huge spider-like creature jumps on the windshield in an attempt to grab his arm. Switching on the many headlights, David begins the road, slowly sifting through the mist, and as they drive by the supermarket, they can see the people who would try to kill them moments before watching them quietly. The roads have been covered with thick spider webs, giving the place a very eerie feel, and David drives by his house, but he finds that it's been destroyed and sees his wife dead, plastered on the outside wall by the thick spider webs. Although he was devastated, he continues the journey, but in a short while, his car runs out of gas and breaks down. Realizing that they had nowhere to go, the group decided to take the easy way out instead of suffering in the future, and seeing that they only had 4 bullets remaining, David shoots his son first and then the 3 remaining survivors, and when he was finally all alone, he screams at the devastation of everything that he has gone through, and he jumps out of his car with the hopes of being taken by one of the creatures, but suddenly, the mist starts to clear, and he sees dozens of army trucks passing him by, and the soldiers have already started the process of exterminating the creatures and were even rescuing survivors. And realizing that he had killed his son and friends only moments before being rescued, he kneels on the ground and starts to scream in agony, and that is where the movie ends.